everyone. Welcome to the pre-show of the DoughDr. We're going to start in about 3 minutes. So if you're logging on, let me know where you're logging on from. I'm working a few things to show you, so sorry about the noise, but it will go away soon, I promise. I see folks are logging in. Yay! Let us know where you're logging in from. I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles. I don't know why we always say it like that. You just gotta say it big when you're from LA, I guess. I hope you guys are doing great today, and it's a beautiful weather wherever you are. I'm trying to see. Great to see you guys. And again, where are you logging in from? Don't be shy, bakers. We're never shy on the DoughDr. We spill it all. Woo, we got a good crowd today. Thank you so much for logging on. One minute. All right. Happy Saturday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the DoughDr Live. We have a great show planned for you today. We're going to be talking about mixing doughs, but first we have some unfinished business from last week, and it was all about meringues. I promised you at the end of last week's show that I would talk about meringue peaks and meringue angles. So first of all, because I don't know if we don't have one this week, but we usually have a question about macarons. So, what's in this bowl? 57 grams of egg whites, which I whipped to cappuccino foam with a pinch of cream of tartar, and then I rained in 50 grams of sugar. Just a pretty much an average French meringue ratio. So first we're going to talk about soft peaks, all right? And what you want to do, I'm going to be very noisy, okay? First of all, you want to get everything off your whisk attachment. You're going to dip it into the meringue. You're going to pick it up, and you're going to evaluate not the peak, but the angle of the peak, all right? So this is a soft peak right here, and if you're like, you just can't see it, pinch the peak away. So a soft peak is about 10 o'clock. This is about a 9:30, so hold on. I wish I could have the mixer in camera, but I can't. So we're just going to do it this way. 30 seconds of mixing, and now I'm going to show you medium peak. Again, just a little bit. Medium peak. You can see that. The angle is about 11 o'clock. All right. Now we're going to go to firm, and we're done. It's one of the biggest lies in baking. This whole notion of peak, who invented that? If I ever found them, they would be in trouble. So most of the time, we're looking for a firm peak, like for macarons. If you have a recipe for macarons that tells you to take your meringue to stiff peaks, don't use it. That's it. 11:30. So the angle where the hands of a clock. Soft peak would be 10, medium would be 11, and firm would be 11:30. Stiff is 12 o'clock high, and with a few exceptions, it's usually too far, and when you fold it in to whatever you're folding it into, it will clump. Not a good sign. Remember, last thing about meringues, if you just can't see it, pinch off the peak. All right, that's part one of unfinished business from last week. A question came in at the very end of the show about Japanese cheesecake. And we're going to put a pin in Japanese cheesecake because I tested one and I was not happy with it. So I need to test again. The texture was off. So Japanese cheesecake, for those of you who may have never had it, has a cakey exterior and a creamy interior. And it's baked for a long time in a water bath at a low temperature. So we're going to put a pin in that Japanese cheesecake. I'm pretty sure our baker who asked that question is on the show. She usually is watching the show. She usually is. So I don't want her to think that I forgot. I did not. But we just need a little bit more time to talk about it and have a good result, a good formula to give you guys. All right, let me just check and see. Okay, great follow-up question on the stiff peaks. What are the exceptions? Angel food cake is often, if an angel food cake needs to make a comeback, we need to bring angel food cake back, makers. Angel food cake, the meringue can be whipped to stiff peaks, but you absolutely never, I've got it back again, here we go. You never want to take it to the point where it's going to separate. So stiff peaks, 12 o'clock high, but this is a soft, stiff peaks. Whenever you're whipping egg whites, never leave the mixer. Stay with them because they can over whip very quickly. So great follow-up question. So angel food cake, sometimes there's a beautiful spring summer dessert from New Zealand. Australia likes to claim it too, called a pavlova. And it's a beautiful baked meringue filled with whipped cream and fresh fruit. And it's a lovely dessert. It's just a lovely dessert, period. But it's also a really nice one if somebody asks you to bring a dessert to like a baby shower. But oftentimes pavlova will be the meringue, when you're making the pavlova, will be taken to stiff peaks. So 2 exceptions for you right there. All right, we're going to move on to meringue for pie is always a failure. Our baker has written in a comment, and I would like her to follow up that comment. Do you mean lemon meringue pie? All right, we'll wait for that. We'll wait for the follow-up response on that. And I want to move on to our next topic. Well, we can always go. I could talk about meringue until 4 o'clock this afternoon, my time. I promise I won't. But our next question came from one of our bakers. She responded to yesterday's post, the shout out to questions for today's show, and she asked, when she mixes a bread dough, a yeasted dough that has whole wheat and seeds in it, how do you know when the dough is mixed enough, because once we get the seeds in, it's hard to tell. So what I have in front of me, and I think you can all see it, is I have a very simple recipe for basically a whole wheat flatbread. Now, this recipe is already typed up, and I will post it as a story later on today. But would you like to see it mixed? I bet you would. Now, bakers, I'm going to give you a choice. You can choose for the seeds in the demo to be either sesame seeds or everything bagel seasoning mix. So you tell me in the comments, because it'll take me a few minutes to get there, bagel mix or sesame seeds. All right. Again, don't panic. I'll be posting this recipe later on today. We're starting with water. This water is about 78 degrees. And I'm going to sprinkle in my instant yeast. You can see it right there. And if we weren't live, I would let this sit for five minutes. All right? Instant yeast. You could go with instant yeast. Oh, but we could do a whole show on yeast. But just for now, water and yeast for 5 minutes. And if you don't know what this tool is, this is called a dough whisk. And it's a great tool for mixing yeast dough by hand and mixing your sourdough starters. And if anyone remembers Romper Room, it's a lot like the magic wand from Romper Room. All right? Now, so back to the recipe. Water and yeast, it's been 5 minutes. I'm going to add a few grams of oil and some honey. You could also use agave. I know we're all avoiding sugar these days. Well, I feel like everybody is. I'm trying. All right? But honey and whole wheat are natural partners. So that's in. So the next thing I'm going to add, whole wheat flour, bread flour. You could use all-purpose, and salt. All right. I'm going to just check and see. What did you say? Oh, you know what I got? Bagel. You guys want to see bagel. So I'm going to add, sorry for the volume measure, but I don't want to stop and weigh. Let's throw in a tablespoon of everything bagel mix. Okay? Ooh, it smells so good. All right. The brand is, they're not a sponsor, full disclosure, it's Spice Hunters, and it smells really good. All right, now the dough whisk, or you could use, I'll start with the dough whisk, and then I'm going to go to the bowl scraper. All right? So the little pigtail is toward the bottom of the bowl, and we're going to mix, and we're going to mix. The other day, one of my friends and we were talking about challah, and she said that she never thought she would attempt a challah. And I thought, oh, but putting together a dough is really easy. And so then this question came in, and I thought, that's it. I'm demoing. And I hope, I know my friend is watching. I really appreciate all of you watching. And I just wanted to show you. So I mixed this very quickly with the dough whisk. You don't have the dough whisk, you can use a wooden spoon. Look at this. It's a cohesive mass. And before I dump it out onto the work surface, I'm going to keep it in the bowl. A lot of times when we make doughs by hand, we dump them out too soon, then you have a shaggy mess. You're adding too much flour, and it feels hopeless. And the last thing we ever want to feel, bakers, is hopeless. So keep it in the bowl, and I'm going to going to fold the dough over itself, and I'm working that moisture through the dough. It doesn't take any time for it to hold. It's holding together. So now I'm dumping it out. I'm going to resist the urge. I'm going to put a little flour down, and I have, keep this close. One thing we want to do is not add too much flour to any dough because it can make our dough heavy. So I have a little flour down, and I'm just going to begin to knead my dough. And when it sticks, oh, I'm going to drop things too. When it sticks, I'm just going to flour my hands a little bit. Now, this won't take long, so don't worry. And I'm going to go fast. Again, you see I'm using this tool to avoid adding too much flour. Okay. It's smoothing out really quickly. So our baker asked about window painting. All right. She wanted to know, how do you know when your bread dough is mixed? How do you get a window pane? And some of you may be thinking, window pane, what's that? Window pane is a test for gluten development used by many bakers. But when we're using seeds tear into the gluten structure, and it can be a little tricky to see if we have enough development. So I'm going to show you a couple hacks for you to know if your bread dough is ready. Another thing you can do is have a spray bottle handy. You can spray your hands when you're kneading, mist them with a little water, and really look at how long I'm going without adding any flour. So that's another trick. Now if it gets too sticky and you have residue, that means, okay, I gotta flour my hands a little bit. I'm almost ready to show you this nice gluten development here. And my other hack, besides a window pane, for you to know if it's done. Again, so back in the day, and I'm talking about, like I always talk about, like 40 years ago, when bread baking became very popular, and I think it's going to become popular again, because anytime there's economic problems or a recession or inflation, or a pandemic, we just start making bread, right? Because it makes us feel good. I know it makes me feel good. All right. So, back in the day, bakers were always told, throw down a lot of flour, knead it till it's smooth. But the problem is that extra flour makes for heavy bread. So that's why I just dusted my hands, and I have my spray bottle handy and my plastic dough scraper to avoid this, because this is what you don't want to do. Let's get rid of that. All right, let's check. So there's two ways to check. If I've got seeds in there, first of all, look at it. It's really pretty. It's smooth. I can knead it into a tight ball. And when I poke it, it springs back. Let me do that better on camera. You guys see it? I poke it and it springs back. So that means it's resilient. That means those gluten strands have tightened up and we're on our way to a nice resilient dough. our baker asked about the gluten window, so I'm going to show you how to look for that. All right, so here's our dough. I'm just going to take my bowl scraper and I'm going to cut off, I would say this is about 2 ounces of dough, and I'm going to put a little flour on my fingers and I'm going to stretch it like silly putty. And I'm going to stretch it, or if you ever played with your gum, and we all did, right? I'm going to stretch it until I can sort of see through it. I think you can see that. And you can see the gluten strands on top. And this looks great. But at the same time, because it's whole wheat flour in there, and the bran in the whole wheat kind of cuts the gluten, and I've got the seeds in there, I'm not pulling hard, I'm just checking for structure. All right, that's it. So now this is going to go in a bowl, and I'm going to cover it, and it's going to sit at room temperature until it doubles in size, probably about an hour and 15 minutes, and then I will finish it up, take the pictures, and post the finished result as a story for you guys to see. Here's the bowl, here's the dough, and I'm going to cover it and set it aside. All right, well that was fun. Let me know in the comments if you like seeing a demo, because I would love to weave demos into the show, but only if you like it. So please put that in the comments. All right, everyone, I'm looking for questions before we move on. Great. Let's see. Oh, okay, the meringue question from way back was about rhubarb custard pie. We're going to put a pin on pie meringues, and we'll come back to that. We'll cover pie meringues and Japanese cheesecake probably next week. All right, deep yoga breath, everybody. The next topic that came in was a great one. This came in this morning, and it was a question about crackers. And I was like, yes! Homemade crackers are really delicious, and they're easy to make. Now, our baker wrote in about crackers. She wrote that she would like to make them for her toddler. And for those of us who have or have had small children, you know that they love crackers and snacks. It's just like their fuel to keep them going. But there's a lot to worry about what goes into our food. So if you make your own crackers, all you got are the ingredients from your pantry. She wanted specifically to make crisp crackers. So let me get my little card here, because I always make notes. My notes have notes. So the way we make crackers crisp is it's good to source a formula that has baking powder in it. And this is just a good thing for you to know, bakers, just for cookie and cracker recipes, but also for your cookie recipes when you're surfing the internet looking for a good cookie recipe, or you are, maybe something's gone viral and you want some cookie recipes gone viral and you want to check it. Baking powder will give you a crisp cookie or cracker, and baking soda will give you more of a chewy one. Now, in many recipes, they're in concert together, and the baking powder will always be more, because we talked about this last week. Too much baking soda in a recipe will make it taste like soap, and that's never a good thing. So, for your crackers, I would use a formula that uses only baking powder, and the other thing is to roll them out very thin, and you might want to get, and how thin is thin? About a 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to step out of frame for 1 second, well, more than 1 second. You need these. These are perfection strips. They're a 1/16 of an inch thick, and you put them down. You put your dough here, you roll, 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 and you keep going until sometimes you have to put a little flour underneath the dough so it doesn't stick, and you roll them this thin. And then, to make sure they're not only they need to be thin, you want them crisp. So then, once they're rolled out and on your baking tray, parchment lined baking tray, you need to dock them. This is called a docker. This is called a fork. They do exactly the same thing. Your crackers need holes in them so that steam escapes and all the excess moisture bakes out. All right? So you gotta poke them or dock them. I love this thing. They're not very expensive. If you do a lot of pies and tarts, you might want to invest in a docker, and we're all civilized, so we all have forks. So either way, you're covered. And then you're going to start your crackers at a relatively high heat for the first third of baking. Crackers take 20 to 25 minutes, and they're thin. All right, maybe 15 to 25 at the outside. And we start higher and then drop down. So maybe start at 425, even 450, and then drop down to 375 and finish the bake. That high heat causes that steam to be created, which will get the excess moisture out quicker. There are other strains of thought that say just bake low and slow for a long time. I'm a hot baker, and I like to start things hot and then cool down, but we all need to find our own way, so you work out what works for you, but I would recommend start at 425 for the first third of the bake, and then turn down to 375 and finish. And for all of you who struggle with excess moisture in your bakes, for example, like in your breads, leave the bread or even the crackers. Turn the oven off and leave them in the oven with the oven turned off for 5 minutes. That will draw out excess moisture. When we go to culinary school, when you go to pastry school, this step in the baking process is talked a lot about. We talk about it a lot. I will learn to talk eventually. But for us at home, it's not something many books or blogs really talk about, but it's an important step to bake out excess moisture. We have one more question. One of our bakers has asked in the comments about a good all-purpose thorough baking book. One you can just go to and have faith in because it has great information. And hands down, that was an easy one. I grabbed it off the shelf, and that's the King Arthur Flour Baker's Companion. These recipes are thoroughly tested, and they're available in volume and grams, and there's a wonderful range from soup to nuts baking wise in here. And speaking of crackers, there are some excellent cracker recipes in this book. It's a total win. You can get it from the kingarthurflour.com website, and of course Amazon has it as well. It's a real classic. Other than that, lately everybody's been writing specialty books. There have not been a lot of good a lot of like go to, grab the book, go into the kitchen, open it, and know that whatever it is you are making will work, especially if you follow the directions and weigh those ingredients, because remember, it's all about consistency. So this is my recommendation for a great all-purpose baking book. And then also you can go to the King Arthur Flour website. They have some really good recipes posted. Not everything is tested, but they have so many readers. You can read the reviews and make your, find something good. All right, so let's see, any questions? The other, I also trust Cooks Illustrated. They have some excellent baking recipes, but King Arthur is my favorite. Just checking for questions here. Oh, we have a great question about yeast in sweetbread. Does too much sugar kill the yeast? Great question from one of our bakers. It doesn't kill it, but sugar slows yeast way down. And also, we've talked about this before, sugar it's kind of a bully. And it's a bully because it's trying to survive just like everything else. And when it gets mixed into a dough or a batter, it begins to attract moisture. So what it does in a sweetbread recipe is it gets the moisture first and it starves out the yeast. So the yeast will work much slower. So there's a couple things we can do. Number one, so just think of, to give you an example, what it does for the yeast, sugar is like, let's say one of us, if you ate too much cake, right? Like supermarket, super sweet, sugary cake with a lot of frosting, and you just had one piece too many, and you found yourself on the sofa just unable to move. Well, that's what it's like for the yeast. And what the yeast needs to do when it's mixed into a dough, it needs to get busy. It needs to grab moisture, it needs to grab nutrition, and if the sugar has weighed it down, well, it just can't do what it needs to do. So there's a couple things. Number one is to use osmotolerant yeast, which comes in a gold package, and it has been engineered to, on the molecular level, hold back the sugar in the dough so that the yeast can fully get a good drink of water and then start grabbing nutrition out of the flour. So that's one thing. And then number two is to hold back some of your sugar when you're mixing a sweet dough and let the dough mix a few minutes, almost like some of you I know may have heard the term autolyse or salt in bread baking. It's almost that same thing where you give it the dough a little bit of time and then you add in the rest of the sugar so the yeast has a chance to sort of move around, activate, and get what it needs to get to be happy and successful and make whatever you're making, your cinnamon rolls, your sweet dough, the best it can absolutely be. All right, everyone, we're at the end of the show. It's been a half hour. Great questions. And again, please let me know if you like the demos, because I will try to weave some demos into each and every show, piggybacking onto your excellent questions. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the tags. Thank you for visiting my website, bakingwithcolette.com. Thank you for everything. Thank you for helping me grow the show. I will see you back here next week at 12 noon Pacific. In the meantime, stay safe and enjoy your baking. Bye, everyone.